Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Listeners, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. Still kind of got to pinch myself for doing this. I'm not a podcaster. This is not something that I normally would have started, but COVID was a blessing for that. And here we are, season 2, episode 41, have Dr. William Attaway coming from Herndon, Virginia. And first of all, I always love everybody to know where they can find our incredible guests who just donate their time to come on the show. And the best place to find Dr. Attaway is via his website, which is catalyticleadership.net. And I'm going to spell it out, CATALYTIC leadership.net. And so a little bit about our guest. Dr. William Attaway is a leadership and executive coach for Catalytic Leadership, LLC, a company he founded to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. And I love that right out of the gate. He has served in the local church ministry for over 25 years and is currently the lead pastor of Southview Community Church, where he has served since 2004. Dr. Attaway holds a Ph.D. in Old Testament with an emphasis in Biblical Backgrounds and Archaeology. He loves to read and speak about leadership, organizational change, and building up people and teams. In January of 22, he released his newest book, Catalytic Leadership, originally from Birmingham, Alabama, currently living in Northern Virginia with his beautiful wife, Charlotte, and their 2 daughters. So Dr. Attaway, thanks for sharing your gift with the world and for dedicating your life to serving others, and obviously for being our guest on Life's Essential Ingredients. Welcome to the show.
Jeff, it's truly an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And I told you a little bit before we got on the air here that we start with a thought of the day, and the pressure is all on me. We're getting close to probably our 100th episode if we're not already there yet. And we are 100% for picking these quotes that are resonating with the guests. So I'm hoping I can keep that record going here. And it's fairly long, and it's from Sister Joan Chittister. And here it is. It is trust in the limits of the self that makes us open, and it is trust in the gifts of others that makes us secure. We come to realize that we don't have to do everything, that we can't do everything, that what I can't do is someone else's gift and responsibility. My limitations make space for the gifts of other people. Why would I pick that one for you?
Wow, that's so good. I think this is one of the themes of what I write and teach and speak about, that, none of us have all the gifts, understand and have knowledge of everything. We need one another. We need to live in community with one another so that we can benefit from the gifts that each one of us has. When I have a skill or a talent or information about something, that's not just for me. That's also for the benefit of those around me. And when I'm willing to share that, then other people get to benefit. And when you get to share yours, other people get to benefit. That's the beauty of sharing what we have instead of pretending like we're good at everything. Because guess what? Nobody is.
Exactly. I love it. Hey, so I always like the listeners to kind of get an idea of what was life like when you were just growing up. And I know that's a broad question, so you can pick any part of it that you want to attack, but just, let the listeners know who you are a little bit.
I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, like so many other of my peers, went through school. And when I was 15, I would say there was a catalytic moment in my life. I had a high school teacher who saw something in me that I did not see in myself. And he invited me to attend my first leadership conference at 15. And I went, and it was out of state. It was up in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And I went and I listened and I learned, and I was captivated, even as a 15-year-old student, by the power of leadership. And from that moment, I have been captivated, and I have been a student of leadership for over 3 decades now.
I love it. I love it. And I love the title of your book. We have some similarities, Catalytic Leadership. You know, our nonprofit is called C4 Leaders, and we have a process called Light the Fuse, which kind of almost tied into this quote a little bit of kind of lighten your fuse to light the fuse of others and allow everybody to just share their gift, so to say. And I love your Catalytic Leadership. Why did you pick that for the name of your business, the name of your book, and what does that really, mean to you?
That comes out of another part of my story. Actually, when I went to college, I went as a pre-pharmacy major. I had worked in a pharmacy in high school and thought, hey, this is a great way to give back to and serve other people, to help meet some tangible needs like this. So I went to college as a pre-pharmacy major. And I got through chemistry and inorganic chemistry, and I got to organic chemistry and decided that, this is not really what I want to do for the rest of my life. It was not my gift. But, in my brief chemistry studies, I discovered that there's no such thing as a wasted experience in our lives. And I learned in those brief studies about the power of a catalyst. A catalyst is something that you introduce into a mixture to incite or spark or to accelerate significant change that makes an impact. It's often difficult to reverse if it's at all possible. And I thought about that in the context of leadership. And even at that point, I had been a student of leadership for several years. And I thought about all of the great leaders I had studied, from throughout history, and leaders that I had worked for and been exposed to personally. And I thought, every great leader has an element of that catalyst in them. They're catalytic. They want to either spark or incite or accelerate significant change, right? Whether it's in the organization or in the world writ large. And they want to be a part of that. They want to see that happen because they want to make an impact. And as I've continued as a student and a practitioner of leadership, I've discovered that this is what distinguishes truly great leaders. They want to be catalytic. They want to make a difference. And so that's where the name of the company comes from. That's where the book comes from, because my goal is to help leaders become catalytic in what they lead.
And let's just jump right into that. How do you help your clients take that step if they just aren't able to be in that space? And obviously they're reaching out to you because they're realizing, hey, they have something in them, but they don't know how to get it going. What are some of the steps that you take with your clients?
The first step that we always talk about is the importance of what I call the one non-negotiable when it comes to this topic of catalytic leadership. The one non-negotiable is to have a teachable spirit. That is a learning posture, acknowledging I don't know everything and I can learn something from anyone or any situation. Now, sometimes you may learn what not to do, but I would argue that can be incredibly valuable. If you approach every conversation, every meeting, every situation and circumstance in your life, every relationship, every job, every responsibility with that posture, with a teachable spirit, that's the non-negotiable for catalytic leaders. Because if you see every opportunity as an opportunity to learn something, that's going to help you catapult you into being catalytic like nothing else will. I can teach you, I can coach you in a lot of different things, but I can't develop a teachable spirit for you. Only you can do that. That is a choice. It costs you nothing. There is no price tag on it other than your choice, your decision to get up every day and say, no matter what room I'm in, no matter what conversation I'm a part of, no one will be more teachable than me.
I love that. I love that. And I wish, and I know it is that easy because it is a choice, and I hear you. But I just think I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. People are getting pulled in so many directions. And so many times we don't see the choices that are right in front of us because different parts of our brain are firing that's where our focus and where our energy goes. So how do you help? And I love and totally agree with everything that you shared, but say I'm just not in that space just yet to even kind of acknowledge that non-negotiable because my amygdala is just firing too much and it's just, I just can't get into that space. How would you help somebody that's there before they're able to say, okay, I'm going to sign up, put my name on the dotted line, and that non-negotiable is something that is exactly what it says?
Great question. It starts with pre-deciding. Before you're ever in the circumstance, before you're ever in the situation, you pre-decide, I'm going to be this. I'm going to be teachable. This is something that I do every morning, every day. I'm going to be teachable today. No matter what life throws, what unexpected, what expected, doesn't matter. I'm going to predetermine before I'm ever in the situation. Anybody can do that. Now, you're going to have trouble. You're going to struggle. We all do, because sometimes you encounter something and you immediately slide back into your natural default, which may not be that. Fair enough. That's where a coach comes in, because a coach is going to cheer you on, is going to help you see what could be and what should be, and help you develop those habits and skills. Right? That's the purpose of a coach in any part of your life, truly. It's to help you develop the habits and skills so that this becomes normal and natural for you. At first, it's like learning to walk. No kid like starts walking and immediately is really good at it. You start walking and you fall down a lot and you trip and you take a step and you fall. That's normal. Why do we think developing a habit in any other part of our life is going to be different? We're going to take a step and we're going to stumble. We're going to fall. We're going to trip. We're going to miss it sometimes. That's okay. The question is, are you going to get back up? Are you going to continue to make the decision and the choice because you know that's the most helpful posture to be in for the rest of your life? Now, this begins, too, with understanding how you're wired, Jeff. And this is something that I'll work with my clients on. Understanding your gifts, your skills, your passions, your talents, your personality, your temperament. Every one of us is wired differently, right? We have a different mixture of those things. And so what my gifts and passions are different than maybe your gifts and passions. My temperament and personality may be different than yours. That's okay. There's not one right one. But understanding how you're wired helps you to lead fully as you. So often, especially leaders, as they begin to embark on their own leadership journey, they're copying other leaders. They're copying leaders that they respect, that they may have read about or heard about or watched on YouTube or maybe even worked for. And their leadership is a copy of that. That's normal. The problem is when we stay there. Because ultimately what we will turn into is a bad copy of a great leader instead of leading out of your own wiring, discovering how you are uniquely gifted, have unique passions and talents and personality and temperament that will help you lead in a way that is unique to you and that this world needs.
Oh, man. I love it. And I'm not trying to go crazy with our quote and our thought of the day, but you've already spoke to it like 10 times. And it's just crazy how that works out, and I've been, I'm a nurse is what I've done for my career of 29 years. And I have quite a few health challenges. So I'm no longer working in that capacity. And now I just am a volunteer. But my last job was a nursing professor. I've been a high school, college professional basketball coach, and I've always started my practices and my classes with the thought of the day. And it always holds true that at some point, either during the lecture, during the class, during the practice, in this case, during the podcast, those words just come to life. And just love that piece and love what you said of just, finding and leading with your own wiring, and love too how, we all are taking ideas from everyone and everywhere. And then can you use those to kind of get you started? And then say, okay, how can I take those and then make them mine and put my essential ingredients into creating that and then owning that space? Yeah, just really, really enjoying what you're sharing. But let's get into you a little bit. I love the listeners to, especially when you take someone who's performing at a high level and then sharing that in coaching, is that, all right, William, how do you do that? What are your life's essential ingredients of like starting your day, some of the habits, some of the intention that you bring that allow you to perform and do all that you do, that perhaps the listeners can take maybe one or two of those things. And I'm going to take that, just like we just talked about, and try it and then make it my own.
Yeah, I already alluded to one of those, and that's starting the day, deciding fresh every day, I'm going to be teachable today. I'm going to look for opportunities to learn something in every situation. Sometimes it's not things I would choose to learn. Sometimes it's not what to do, but it's what not to do. But I'm going to approach it with a teachable spirit. approaching your day with that kind of humility, with that kind of learning posture, I can't even begin to tell you what a difference that will make. And I've watched this make in the lives of so many leaders that I've coached in this over the years. They talk about how this changes the meetings that they're in. This changes their conversations with their direct reports, with their teams, with the people that they lead. This changes that because all of a sudden it's not about them just being the oracle at Delphi, spouting knowledge and wisdom, but they're listening because they want to learn. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means you listen more. That's how you learn. So that's a non-negotiable for me. That's part of my day. I'm going to make that choice before the day begins, right? I'm a person of faith. You said earlier, I've been leading a church now for over 25 years in different contexts, the current one since 2004 here outside of DC. And what that means is that the beginning of my day, I'm going to spend time in prayer. I'm going to spend time reading scripture because that is where I find my center, my grounding, my anchor point. Right? Understanding that I don't have all the wisdom. I don't have all the knowledge. I'm going to have to tie into my Heavenly Father for that. And His word says that when I need wisdom to ask, and He will give it. I lean into that every single day. So that's a part of my daily routine because as a person of faith, that's my anchor point. These are habits that you have to develop. You have to find out what is it that's going to help you to launch into your day in such a way that you're not just waking up, immediately rolling over, grabbing your phone and start scrolling or start looking at your email and thinking, oh, I got to do that. I got to respond to that. I got to do that. Then you're in reaction mode all day from the time you open your eyes. That's not leadership. Leadership is when you move into being proactive. Right? You're going to pre-decide, you're going to determine, no, I'm going to start my day this way. Then I will move into what needs to happen. Then I will look at what's pending and what's waiting. That's a choice. And it's a choice every one of us can make if we will choose to do so.
I love it. I love it. And I've been just playing with this sentence in my head and really trying to bring it to life, but it's build a habit to create intention to live your purpose.
That's good.
And I think so many times we can have these habits, but habits are a good thing, but they can also lead you to create a lot of blind spots because you just now are on automatic pilot because you have that habit. Again, habits are good, but if we're not kind of staying fresh with them. And so that's why I was like, all right, well, I want to take that to the next step. And I said, all right, well, why am I really building this habit? Well, I'm building it to create intention.
That's right.
So then I can have that to really, all right, why is this important to me? Why am I doing this? And how can I serve others? And then, okay, well, that's where this third piece comes in for me is, all right, well, now I'm living my purpose. Yeah. And so I love just putting those 3 pieces together and helping the people that I get to serve try and just, all right, well, you create whatever is going to work for you, but there's a little bit of our blueprint for that. But I want to get into your Ph.D. a little bit and your archaeology background. And that's just, you share whatever you want. Again, a broad question, but is there any piece of history as you were studying that you go back to again and again and again that I would say lights your fuse, that is your catalyst, that you just say, oh man, this just grounds me and it's just, I need that all the time. And is there something that speaks to you in that way?
Yeah, my major area of focus was the background of the Bible, right, and archaeology. And so what that means is that you're digging into the geography, the history, the culture, the language, right? All of that make up the background. So often when we read a scripture, read any of scripture, we read it as a 21st century American or a 21st century Canadian or whatever we are, right? And that's the lens that we're looking through. And what we don't understand is that we are separated by all of the things I just mentioned. We live in a different geography. Right, all these places that are mentioned, we don't know those places, and we don't live in the same type of climate, most of us. Right, we don't live in the same point in history. We don't live in the same type of culture. It's not the same language originally. It's been translated, but every translation is an interpretation. And so, what I wanted to do was be able to dive back in to the actual background, right, and understand what it meant then, because then, and only then, I believe, can you understand what it means now? You have to understand what it meant first. And so that's what my Ph.D. is centered around. My master's and my doctorate actually is centered around this idea of biblical backgrounds and archaeology. I've had the opportunity to work on several digs in the Near East, in Jordan, in the northeast part of the Dead Sea. It's a place called Tal El Hammam. It's a fantastic site, and I've been there several times. It's a wonderful, wonderful project to be a part of. I was on staff for two seasons there. It's really great. I love being a part of that because that just reveals at a different level all the things I just talked about, right? The culture, the geography, all of a sudden you're experiencing it. It's not just words on a page. Now you're smelling it. Now you're seeing it. You're feeling the wind in the Jordan Valley, right? You're feeling the heat in the Jordan Valley. I mean, that's a different experience. This creates a different sensation. So now when you go back and you read the text, it's not just words on a page, because all of that is now part of your experience. What I try to do as I speak and teach on that is bring that to life as much as I can without you actually being there.
I love it. I love it. And you're just taking me, my wife and I just did the Camino de Santiago. I don't know if you're familiar with that, the path of St. James.
Okay.
And they've been walking this pilgrimage since the 9th century, at least that they're aware of.
It's amazing.
It's in, it starts in the most southern part of France and goes all the way across the northern, western part of Spain, and walks towards Finisterre, which translates to what at that time the end of the earth.
Oh my goodness!
And they thought, hey, that's it. There is no more. Took them out to the ocean, and we just did that pilgrimage for 31 days. Walked about 730 kilometers.
Wow!
And it was just when you were talking about experiencing the culture and going back in time, you just were thinking, all right, how was life when people were on this pilgrimage? And I was so touched to have this necklace that you can kind of see here. We were in Santo Domingo de la Calzada, and Santo Domingo is a saint, and he just really spoke to me, and it changed my life. I had to find this old medal with him on it, and just how he was just a servant of the Lord and doing what he could to bring and share his gift. And it's funny, he had tried twice to be part of the Benedictine order at that time, and they kind of shoot him away. And he, I don't know, you might know from history, I'm not a historian, but his father was a peasant, and just he didn't have the pedigree, I guess, maybe to get and walk in those shoes. Yeah. And so he says, hey, he became a hermit for a little bit. And then he said, you know what, I'm just going to find a way to serve in my own way. And so he started building bridges for the peregrinos, those are the people making the pilgrimage.
I love that.
He built a hospital. And then one of the church leaders said, wow, this guy's doing huge work for us. Let me take him in and be part of our order. And then,
that's amazing.
He went on to just do incredible work, and somebody that you wouldn't ever know about him. You can't really find much on him unless you were on that pilgrimage, and has the most beautiful church in that space. But
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and there's so much others. I don't want to bore, and I want to get into you, but a lot of cool stories with Santo Domingo. But let's get into, I know being a leader, you have to know who you are. And how do you help your clients develop both of those? Self-awareness, I think, is one of the steps, and then probably their values. Can you speak to both of those?
It begins with asking the right questions. And this is where I've seen a coach to be so helpful in my own journey, and why I've been coaching others for a couple of decades now in this, because you're exactly right. It starts with you. It starts with the leader. You can't lead anybody someplace you've never been. And so you have to start with you. You have to raise your own self-awareness of who you are and what matters to you. What are the big rocks in your life that are the immovable things that really are who you are and how you're wired? Once you understand that, that's going to set true north for you, right? That's going to then say, okay, then this is the direction, this is the path. And so often I see clients who will come to that awareness as we dig deep and ask the right questions. They come to that level of awareness on their own. It's not that I'm directing them any direction, right? I have no vested interest in this. I want to help them find what it is they are wired to do. But with the right questions, they come to that point and they get there and they're like, okay, so now what? All right, so I know it's this direction. Now what? Understanding your wiring plays into this, right? Understanding, okay, so you are so passionate about this, but you have absolutely no skills or gifts in this at all, right? So there's some things you need to do to develop those. There are some things that you need to learn, right? Maybe you need to mentor under somebody who's really good at this, right? These are things that are steps. It starts with understanding where you are. You have to first define reality as it is, not as you wish it were, not as you think it should be. Define reality as it is. Then once we define what those goals are, what your personal mission, your personal vision and values are, that's your there. Now, how do you get from here to there? Once you define where here is and you define where there is, honestly, that's the hard part. Figuring out how to get from here to there, that gets a whole lot easier because then it's just a matter of putting together a plan. And that plan is different for every leader, because every leader's answer to those questions is going to be a little bit different. Every leader's wiring is going to be a little bit different. And this is why there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to this. This is why this is customized for every leader that I work with.
Well, they're lucky. I just love your whole approach and can just feel your spirit through this interview. So guarantee your clients are just so fortunate to have you guiding them in developing their gift and their best self. And where would you say in your work with your clients, reflection and just evaluation, you're going to be, as a leader, anybody, you're challenged each and every day. And I love your coachable spirit that you're sharing with your clients. And then part of that, especially as the leader, is reflection and evaluation. Walk the listeners through, the importance of that and how you help your clients develop that skill.
Evaluation is part of the secret sauce. And I mean, you coach basketball, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you have somebody who is learning how to shoot, right, but their form is wrong, but they do it over and over and over and over and over again for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, they have a lot of experience. Does that make them good? No, not at all. We have this idea that experience makes you better. Experience does not necessarily make you any better at all. Evaluated experience makes you better. This is why evaluation is so critical. David Allen wrote a book many years ago now called Getting Things Done, where he talks about the power of a weekly review. This is something that I talk about a lot. I've found so much value since I first read that book in 2006. It has become part of my life. There's a weekly review that I do every week where you look back. You look back over your calendar and what the last week was like, and you say, what did I learn this week? What went right? What are the things that I can celebrate? Too often we don't celebrate the wins. We run right past them because we got the next hill, the next goal, the next KPI to achieve. Celebrate the wins. What went right? What's rewarded is repeated when it comes to your brain. You want your brain to reward the win. You want to pause and do that so that it will be repeated. You want to draw more of those, right? So what's rewarded is repeated. What went right? What did I learn? Okay. Now, next, what went wrong? What did I learn? What do I wish it ended differently or had gone differently? What decision would I make differently next time, given what I know now? What went right? What went wrong? Third question, how do we make it better next time? How do we make it better? Okay, I learned some stuff. Now, the next time I'm in a similar situation, a similar circumstance, a similar conversation or meeting, what would I do differently? Now, the power of this weekly review is that when you process that, when you process your week that way, the next time you're in that circumstance, you'll remember that. And that will help to inform because you evaluated it. Evaluated experience makes you better. I look forward in my weekly review to think about the meetings and conversations that I can foresee for the coming week. What do I want to bring into those? What kind of energy do I want to bring into those? What kind of value can I bring into those conversations? I want to pre-think about that, right? Because sometimes it takes preparation. I don't want to wing every conversation. I don't want to wing every circumstance I'm in. That's not helpful. I want to get better. So that evaluation process is helpful both looking back and looking forward. But over time, there is a cumulative effect. A friend of mine, Jonathan Milligan, says consistency is the mother of momentum. Every leader I know wants momentum in their organization, for their mission, the goals, what they're trying to achieve, the projects they're working on. They want momentum. Momentum is a leader's best friend. How do you get there? Consistency. Day after day, week after week, month after month.
Man, well, that's speaking to me huge, because that's one of my C's for C4 leaders is consistency. And then when I'm coaching, I call it Big Mo.
That's it, the Big Mo. That's right.
You got to have Big Mo. And most of the time, the teams, the leaders that can create that and know how to tap into that and to be consistent with it are going to win more often than they're going to lose. And when you do lose, you're going to be able to bounce back a lot quicker. Because you've taken action towards becoming consistent and doing these things that you're talking about of self-awareness, reflection, and evaluation. Oh man, I just love it. I love it. I know I listening to you on another podcast, you were talking about filling the bucket of potential in each person. Talk about that, and why is that personally something that's just like that drives you?
You know, I told you when I was 15, one of my high school teachers saw something in me I didn't see in myself. You know what he saw? Potential. I didn't see that. I didn't see myself as a leader, not by any stretch of the imagination. But he saw the potential for that in me. And he spoke into that. And he didn't just speak into it. He pointed me and equipped me to take a step. Here's my question for leaders. I don't care what you lead, right? Maybe you lead, a family. Maybe you lead a department or a team. Maybe you're leading yourself. That's the hardest person to lead. I talk about that in the last chapter of the book. We're the hardest person we will ever lead. Whatever you lead, whatever your context, do you identify potential in the people that you're leading? I had a conversation this morning, actually, with one of my direct reports, and we were talking about this. And I told her, I said, I see potential in you in this area. And I called it out and I spoke to it. And I said, now, how can we help take that potential and turn it into reality? Potential sounds really great when you're a teenager or you're in your 20s. That's a great word. But that is not so great a word when you're in your 40s or 50s. Man, they had such potential. What happened? Man, I wonder what happened. What wasted potential? What terrible things to say are here, right? Potential is something every leader should be looking for, identifying, speaking into, and equipping so that those phrases are never, ever said.
I love it. And I agree with everything that you just said. I'm going to play devil's advocate again. Yeah. I love the word potential because just for me personally, I don't ever want to reach my full potential until I take my last breath. That's it. I don't want to be saying, hey, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I would say, there's still just so much more to learn and so many more areas to grow, and then so many opportunities to share your gift and have gifts be shared onto you. And so, I love the word potential, and I love listening to you in that podcast talking about it. You also talked about margin, and you've spoken about this throughout our conversation without using that word. Mm-hmm. But talk about margin and why that's important for leaders, and how, again, maybe people can create margin.
A lot of the leaders that come to me or that I speak to in a larger group will come to me afterwards and talk about how, hey, these things sound great and these sound like some habits I want to and need to develop, but when do I have the time? I don't have any time. I'm booked solid. I'm overwhelmed already. I can't do one more thing. What they're describing is a lack of margin. What they're describing is the fact that they have scheduled and booked themselves all the way to the edges of their calendar and beyond. And it's not just our time, is it? Sometimes we have no margin financially. Sometimes we have no margin emotionally, relationally, because we have expended and expanded until the point where there's nothing left. Operating with no margin in any area of your life is a very dangerous place to be, because then you don't leave any space for the unexpected. The unexpected is a part of life. I have had a number of times in my life, and I'm sure you have too, Jeff, where things happen that you did not see coming. You did not see this particular turn in the road until you were in it. And it's too late in that moment to develop margin. You have to go with what you got. And if you don't have any, you find yourself in a far worse spot than if you've planned ahead. So when I'm talking with leaders, I encourage them and coach them to develop margin in all of those areas. You need to have where you're not expending 100% of your time. If 100% of your calendar is booked, that's bad. That doesn't mean you're important. That doesn't mean you're successful. That's bad. We should call it out and say that, because you've left no margin for anything unexpected. If you spend 100% of what you make and you have no margin, that's bad. You need to have some margin for the unexpected things that happen in life. This is true in all parts of our lives. There's so many good writings on this. I believe it was Richard Swanson wrote a book called Margin. So helpful in this conversation because he talks about the need for margin in all different parts of our lives. Leaders need to understand that what we model is what those who are following us will do. If we lead with no margin, guess what the people who follow us will do? They will operate with no margin too. Is that the kind of influence you want to have as a leader? That's not catalytic. That's catastrophic.
Amen. Amen with that. You mentioned a few books as you've been talking. Any books that like anybody listening that's interested in developing their self other than your book, for sure, and we'll have you give that plug. But maybe the last couple books, I know you're a huge reader. I'm like, oh man, I got to tell the world about this. Is there any that jump out at you right now?
I just finished a book a few weeks ago. I actually got it right here. It's called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. This is a brilliant book that puts into context the brevity of our lives and the importance of being intentional with the time that we have. I've read a lot of books on time management and productivity. It's an area of passion of mine. This is near the top of the list. So highly, highly recommend this. He really challenged me in a number of areas. Yeah, I've been intentional here, but this adjoining area here, I really haven't been. And it's caused me to reflect and evaluate and make some changes. And that's always what I see as the sign of a good book. When it challenges me and causes me to take a step and do something different, that's what I'm going to recommend again and again.
And I might be misinterpreting what you're saying, but how do you help your clients to say no and the power of no? And if you're trying to have intention and to be intentional, you can't put all that attention into everything. And so learning how to say no, and when you were just saying this adjourning or adjacent part that you were trying to develop, is there a time when you tell your clients or yourself that, okay, that might be nice, but it's going to come at too big of a price, where you just have to say no? And I don't know if you're following what I'm saying, but I'm not being too articulate with my words, but it just jumped out at me when you were talking about what you were sharing right there.
I'm tracking with you. That is a conversation I have very frequently. Just last week with a client, in fact. Every time you say yes to something, you are by default saying no to something else, at least one other thing. What you say no to matters more than what you say yes to. And this is hard for leaders because we have great ideas, we have passion, and we want to do all the things and see all the change and make all the advance and take the next hill and lead the next team. We want to see the results. We want to get it going. We want to be catalytic. The problem is, if you spread yourself too thin, you'll be catalytic in nothing. You'll be mediocre at everything. Mediocrity inspires no one ever. And so understanding that, we have to choose what we're going to say yes to, what we're going to lead in a yes way about. And that means we say no to a lot more things than we say yes to. For instance, client not long ago, we were talking about this, and his tendency is toward being driven, toward overwork, right? What does that mean? That means that his family gets less time. And he was talking about this and saying, this is hurting over here, but I feel like I have to do this over here. And if I don't do it, and the conversation, I'm sure you can build that in your head, right? Okay. Now let's look at this and let's understand that you have 168 hours a week, and so do I. And so does every great leader who's ever lived. How are you going to split it up? You get to decide. Hopefully you're going to sleep 7 or 8 hours a night because that's healthy and you need sleep and you're not a machine. And if somebody needed to hear that, that's permission for you that you need to sleep. That's important. The rest of the time you're awake, what are you going to do with it? How intentional are you going to be with it? Too many people have time spent by default. They're scrolling, their phone, their tablet, their computer. This becomes the default. Or they're scrolling on Netflix. And they're not being intentional with the use of their time. And then they complain that they can't get everything done. Then they complain that the relationships that matter most are ones that are suffering the most. What I will drive back to every time in those conversations is you are making a choice. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, at least one other thing. The relationships that matter the most in your life are the ones you know the relationships. If you're married, this is with your spouse. If you have kids, it's with your kids. I've spent a lot of time by virtue of what I do for the last 25 years. I've spent a lot of time with people at the end of their lives. And I've heard a lot of people talk about, their last things and regrets. You know what I've never heard anybody say? I wish I had worked more. I wish I had spent more time at the office. I wish I had accomplished one more KPI or achieved one more award or achievement in my field. I've never heard anyone say that in over 25 years. You know what I've heard? I've heard regrets around relationships. I've heard regrets around time not spent with those closest to them. I've listened as they bemoan that they wish they could go back and redo so many elements of those relationships and repair rifts that had grown. That's what I hear. We get the advantage of learning from that. I don't want those regrets at the end of my life. I don't. I want to live in such a way that I don't have those. I may make other mistakes and step in other ditches. That's fair. But if I have the opportunity to avoid some ditches, I'm going to do that. I want to learn how to make sure that the relationships that I have with those closest to me matter most, that those are a priority. When I talk about putting family first and how important this is, I will often have driven leaders push back on that and say, yeah, well, if I live like that, I'll end up living out of my car in no time. I can't operate that way. Guess what? You choose. You decide. If you got time for a story, I'll give you a brief illustration of this. Just from my life. 3.5 years ago, we're experiencing some momentum organizationally at the church where I serve. Things are going up and to the right. We're getting some traction and seeing some great things happening. And my older daughter started having some headaches. And that, she's about the age then that I was when I started developing migraines as a teenager. And so this was, well, maybe that's what this is. We go to the doctor again, and it just doesn't seem to be getting any better. The medication's not doing what it's supposed to do. And so we go back and they send us to the ER and run some scans. And it turns out she had a brain tumor on the back right side of her brain. Well, that was completely out of the blue, completely unexpected. I mean, no history, none of this. And there it is. So that night, they take her by ambulance just within the hour to a larger hospital in the region. And 2 days later, the pediatric neurosurgeon has the tumor out. And 2 days later, she's home. And we begin to wait for the biopsy results. Turned out it was a very, very rare form of cancer. Only about 50 teenagers a year in the world are diagnosed with it. Wow. I did not have that in my plan for 2019. Nowhere. I didn't see that coming. And that started a journey for us of treatment and radiation and moving to Baltimore and living out of the Ronald McDonald House for 7 weeks while we're doing treatment and all these things. That was a segment of time that I could not have planned for. And that was what it was. You got to do that. You know what I wasn't thinking about in those moments in the hospital waiting for the surgery, waiting for the biopsy results. You know what I wasn't thinking about? The next KPIs, the next achievement, the next hill we got to climb. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about the relationships that matter most. And this is what I will coach leaders in and say, you need to understand that was a moment for me when I got to put into play everything that I've talked about for years and how important it is that, one day somebody else is going to sit in the chair you sit in. One day somebody else is going to do what you do. You're not going to live forever. Somebody else is going to do it. Then what? It's going to be those closest to you, hopefully, that are still there. Do you still have a relationship? Have you invested in that? This is why I talk to leaders about this, and it feels soft and squishy and like that's not really leadership. Guess what? Every part of our life affects every other part. And if you think that's not part of your leadership at work, I've got some stories for you from leaders who would beg to differ.
Oh, yeah, what man? Well, and I'm hoping your daughter is doing better now, and
she is. She's doing great.
And
she's doing great.
Free, and
there's been no recurrence, and we are so grateful for that. She's actually heading to college next week. If you can believe it.
Nice. Oh, congratulations! Yeah. No, my heart was racing a little bit for you. I have 2 daughters myself, and we've been blessed. They've been healthy up to this point, but you just feel that, and then. Any surgery, any tumor, but my wife happens to be a neurosurgical ICU nurse.
Oh my goodness.
And so that's what she deals with all the time. And so, hey, let's get you a plug for your book. I know all this stuff we've been talking about is in it, but why do the listeners need to run out and get your book? I'm guessing they can just get it from your website or from Amazon or anywhere else, but give that a plug here.
Sure. Yeah, I wrote the book because I wanted to capture a lot of the learnings that I've had in coaching leaders for over 20 years and being a student of leadership for over 30 years. In my coaching leaders in a variety of different contexts, in government, in business, in the C-suite, educators, military, so many different types of leaders, founders, entrepreneurs. What I found is that there are threads, there are principles that apply no matter your context. And that I kept coming back to again and again in conversations with leaders from such widely diverse places. And so what I did in writing the book was write about 12 of those key principles that I see that are across context, no matter where you lead or where you serve, that you can take and you can apply today. I wrote it in a way that feels like we're sitting across a table having coffee. That's the voice I wanted to use to write this, because I think that's the kind of book I would want to read. This is the book that I wish I had when I was beginning as a leader, or at different points in my leadership when I hit a wall and I got stuck and I couldn't figure out where the ladder to the next level was. These are the principles that have helped my clients and have helped me to get to that next level. So I captured all that in the book, and my hope and goal is to make this available and put this in the hands of as many leaders as I can so that I can help them to intentionally grow and thrive.
I love it. Well, after spending just 50 minutes with you, I'm already knowing that you're doing that. And again, your clients are so fortunate. And listeners, best place to find the book, you can get it on Amazon, but also check out Dr. Attaway's website, catalyticleadership.net. And we've been dancing and talking about death a lot and using that space to create intentional actions that we take on the daily. We always end each episode with kind of the legacy. And there's a great quote from John Austin that says, the only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. I want you to fast forward 50 years from now. You're on your deathbed. You've lived an amazing life. You're surrounded by those that love you. You're ready to take your last breath. What is it that you want those people that are there by your side to have in their heart from the time that they had with you?
I want them to know that they are loved and they are valued and they are valuable. And if I've been able to add value to those closest to me, in addition to others that I serve, I've been able to add value to them in such a way that they know those things, that's a win.
I love it. Listeners, it's been another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. We've been with the amazing Dr. William Attaway. Again, you can find him at catalyticleadership.net. My Pasho usually gets us out of here, but boom, baby, that just happened. We out.